Hi,
Okay.
Christy.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Fine, thank you very much.
Good. Um, I'm excited for this conversation because I've been feeling like kind of it's been building for a while. And I think one thing I was telling you right before we jumped on was what I'm seeing here. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia area here in the States, and you're over in the UK. So
Yeah,
we're in different worlds a little bit,
yeah,
obviously. But one thing that I'm seeing around me so much right now with women is that it's literally, I was on a walk with one of my girlfriends this morning, and she was like, I know 5 or 6 women that are going through this exact same thing right now. She's like, it's just like everywhere, where like the women are like really awake and they're realizing like we're shifting out of like this old paradigm and creating in a new way now. And then the more that they're trying to step into that, the more their husbands are like kind of going off the rails and like drinking, and like a lot of drinking going on, a lot of suppressive behaviors, right? Like
mm,
binge watching TV for hours, like neglecting the children, like all these things
yeah,
are coming up, and
yeah,
they're feeling like some of the women are like, I got to get the hell out of here,
mm,
and some of the women are like, no, I feel like I'm supposed to stay and help him, like there's just all these interesting, reactions. And then we
mm,
get in a place where like, what what do you do?
yeah,
What
yeah. You're
who
right,
are
because I think especially with this situation at the moment, with the COVID situation, where there's a lot of people are feeling very disempowered, and men who are more set up to be people who are meant to be people of the world, who are meant to kind of be in control, jobs are being lost, economy is being trashed, nobody knows what the future is going to hold. It's going to make a lot of men feel very, very insecure.
Mhm.
And what men tend to do is block their own feelings. But by blocking their own feelings, they're also then blocking, their relationships, especially with the people who are closest to them, the people they're meant to love the most. I have it similar with my girlfriend. I have a girlfriend who has been married for a long time, and her husband is just talks at her, and he kind of like he puts his arm on the mantelpiece and gives her a lecture. It's like mansplaining. And then when she wants to say something, he kind of just talks all over her. So it's kind of, and she's getting very distressed because she thinks, do I need to divorce my husband now? And I said, well,
Right.
don't. I said, from what I'm looking at is that your husband is getting, he kind of knows that something's not quite right, something's very off,
Yeah.
but he is so confused that he needs to almost like have a conversation with himself in his mind about it. But women are getting very upset about it because their relationship, their intimacy is no longer present. And now this is where we're shifting out of the matrix, right? It's all game over in the matrix, because
Yeah.
the matrix is no longer working in the benefit of humanity, if we want to talk about it like that, because people are losing, everything's been run through fear, and fear is blocking the heart energy. So we're going out of the head, which is matrix, because it's duality, because there's a left and right side of the brain, and that's the subject objective, into the heart, which is unity, where we become unified, where we all enter a unified field together, and we can only do that in the heart. And the bad news is that it's not out there, it's inside here. So now, because women are naturally more magnetic than men, because men are out there, women are more internal, they have more connection to their feeling. So the women particularly who feel the most pain about that, because they're no longer feeling loved, they're no longer feeling there's love in the world, or the love is very manipulated and twisted in some kind of weird way, where we're getting a very cultish behavior going on, where you're only allowed to be a member of the cult if you're behaving in certain very pre-prescribed ways, and so some people are now realizing, well, I feel like I'm in prison, because I'm not allowed to be me anymore, so there's a whole load of issues we can talk about another time. But what we want to do is, I feel that if we're going to do the right work, we have to give practical solutions to the problem, because it's all well and good talking about it, but we need to help women in particular, because they're going to be the future pathfinders, because we're finding a path out of the matrix, and what we're programmed to do is to ignore our true nature. The true nature. Now, if I could just describe that, it's the thing that happens when you stop trying. Okay, so it's like the thing that naturally happens in our energy field, and if we switched our brains off, we would be in our flow. Now the problem is because our brains are not switched off, and we can't ignore it, and we can't resist our brain. It's a difficult conundrum. So we have to recognize that our brains are running us through fear. So every time we're compelled to keep going back into the idea of, I've got to judge this situation, I've got to fix the outside world, I've got to make it right, I've got to modify something about me because I'm somehow not right. It's a bit like Cinderella. Yeah, the Cinderella story, with the ugly sisters, they have to chop part of their arm, part of their foot off in order to fit into the shoe, the shoe. So and that's where women end up landing a lot of the time, where they just naturally assume there's something wrong with them, or they're not lovable enough, and so they have to keep doing more of what they're doing, but that doesn't seem to work either. So my suggestion for today is that my sort of latest insight is that we have inner flow, and we can't make a plan out there because we don't know what the future is going to hold. We can't say, right, I'm going to get divorced, I'm going to find a new business, I'm going to have a new job. That's not going to work, unfortunately, in practical terms, because ultimately those jobs, those relationships will find you. You don't find them. It's not your job to find them. What you have to do is align to your inner flow, because your inner flow is your deepest wisdom. It's your super consciousness that's going to take you synchronistically to the place that you need to go to. So the temptation is to say, I've got to ditch the husband, ditch everything. But no, that's not the way forward, because that's just going to create more division, more dis-ease, more pain, and more fear. So it's returning back home. So one practical suggestion is that we connect to our inner flow. Now, the way I describe it is, it's a plant. Okay, so women are very connected to plant energy. Now, plants are in the 4 elements, is the water element. So and think about a plant. If you plant a seed in the ground, you don't know what that seed's going to be until it starts growing. Mm-hmm. And it will have its own good timing. It will grow in a particular season, and it's already got its own DNA. It knows what it's going to become, and all it needs is attention, which is the sun, because that's the light of consciousness, and the soil, which is the beingness, and water, which is emotion or love. So we start paying attention to our own inner flow. So if we pay attention to that seed that's inside us, we start to help it to grow and help it to blossom. So like I say, these things are symbolic. The sun, the earth, the water, that's all we have to do. And the nutrients is again about recognizing that we deserve the very best in life, and all we do is we align to our deepest desires. So nutrients is about what do you truly desire in your life, what would make your life, what you feel complete and whole. Again, it's not something huge like I want to win the lottery. It's more like I love going into the woods because it's very shady, it's very aromatic. It makes my soul really happy. Or other people love the beach, because I love the sea, the way the sea air comes through me. So we just start to align to those feelings that we love and make us feel really happy. Or it could be looking into a child's eye, that makes me very happy. So we have to go simple, and when we align to that desire, we can manifest it. Okay, so but in order to manifest it, we have to align to this plant that's inside us. So our inner flow is represented by a plant. So we dowsed it earlier on for you, didn't we? Yeah. And so your plant is the tulip. Okay, so the tulip is a spring flower. So if we look at the symbolism behind it, for a start, it's a plant that is like a bright color that cannot be sort of mistaken. So it's almost like a little flag saying I'm here, you know. And what I feel it represents is hope, because it's spring, it's after the, you know, after the snow and the coldness and the bleakness and everything's died back. So for me, it's about the dawning of a new era, you know. So you're here now. The things that you've talked about is sort of feeling invisible, because a lot of women feel invisible, you know. And there you are, being this amazing plant in the wilderness that's completely visible. So when you become that tulip, when you align to your inner flow, where you're literally moment by moment flowing like a plant in the way, and you do everything in your good timing, everything feels right in the moment that you either are still, or you're moving towards something that gives you pleasure, follow your bliss. You become that tulip, you become that symbolic tulip. And then, you know, the men in your life start to notice you, because the men are in the wilderness. They're kind of lost. They're kind of, because they've disconnected from their feeling state, you know. So it becomes, you know, that starts to turn the tide. So tell me what you feel about that. So,
Yeah. I think it's interesting to, like, for me, like, to see how, like, the thinking about the tulip and, like, all the work that I've done with you and understanding my energy, and how it's so often that it's like the opposite of what you've experienced, especially in childhood, right? Like, just being
yeah.
invisible and feeling like I'm, you know, I don't need to take up space, or, you know, those kinds of things. And then to discover like your flow is actually kind of this opposite, like, no, it's like I'm kind of like, you know, radiating something that's attracting attention, right? So then it feels like so right, and then so like at the same time, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, because the ego mind is constructing a false persona that is complete opposite to who you really are. And it actually looks at your biggest qualities, your best natural abilities, your best gifts and talents. And that's the first thing it covers up. So it has a narrative around being completely invisible. So you're a very magnetic person who can attract a lot of attention, but yet your ego mind will say the opposite. Magnetism is the opposite of electric. So electric is everything you can see in the seen world. Magnetic is all the hidden stuff. So from the matrix point of view, you're like a nobody or a nothing that has to kind of just fit in somehow.
Right.
And if somebody doesn't recognize you, or acknowledges you, or you can't attract people's attention, it's because you think that, well, I'm nobody and nothing, and therefore I have no substance, I have no power in the world. And so everything is going to dampen our spirit, you know, to make us feel very unworthy and all the rest of it, you know. So and that's the unfortunate situation we're in, is that the moment we believe our ego mind, it doesn't matter how helpful the ego mind is trying to be, it's going to tell us a lie about ourselves, actually, you know. So that's why it's very tempting to believe the mind, you know, but we've come to a point in humanity where we've recognized, however way you look at it, it's what I call the merry-go-round, where we looked at every single angle, and whatever we try to do, you know, women try to be attractive, women try to do this, they do that, they do everything, but however lovable they try to make themselves, it's not going to work anymore, you know. So you have to try the unthinkable, which actually is just be you, and to hell with everything else.
Radiate that actual beingness that you are.
Yeah.
You know, and it's, as the more I've been stepping into that, you know, myself, it's like the mind does have a lot to say about how, like, even when you do it and things, you're like, oh my gosh, like this is way easier than anything I've ever done. But the
Exactly.
mind will still have things to say about that, right? And so
Yes.
there's like this, there feels like this in between space that we have to kind of go through, where it feels kind of tumultuous. It's like it's you're doing it and the mind is like wreaking havoc at the same time, and you have to really steady yourself through that so that you can get to a place where you're mostly living in your flow, and you can realize that life is just going to come through you and bring to you what you need, so that you can just show up moment by moment, and you don't have to have this grand plan, and you don't, all of the things that the matrix tells us, like, like you gotta have a financial plan, you need to have a vision, you need to have a business plan, you need to know, all of these things, right?
Yeah.
And so when you're not doing that, the mind is over here going, what
Yeah,
are you doing? You don't
freaking
have
out.
time for this. You don't even know what
Yeah, exactly. And I've been through that myself. I'm still going through it to a certain degree, but the more I do the work, the more evidence I have that this is totally the right way.
And that is
It's,
the thing, the
yeah,
evidence. Like, you gather the evidence for the mind.
exactly,
Trust.
exactly. That's exactly it. This is how I've always conducted, because I'm quite a scientific person. I conduct experiments and I say, just for the moment, I speak to the mind. So just for the moment, be quiet and let's conduct an experiment together, right?
Yeah.
And see, just for today, I'm going to go into my flow, just for today. And at the end of the day, you can be on board and help me discover what happens in that day. And the mind starts to get more and more, oh my God, this bloody works. It really
Right.
works. And it works in ways where things start to happen in your life in a very synchronistic way that you couldn't even make up. You end up having a completely different day to the one you thought you were going to have.
Right.
But it is guaranteed effortless, and it's guaranteed enjoyable and interesting. And sometimes things come up that could be a bit annoying, because you're still learning lessons along the way.
Yeah.
Just mean. And so if something turns out in a way that you didn't expect, like for example, a friend calls off a meeting, or or you lose money or something like that, and I don't think that that's going in the wrong direction. It means it's just showing you more pointers along the way. So women are very good at being in their feeling state, where you've got to feel what it feels like. So for example, if a friend, say, let's give an example, a friend calls off a meeting and you were looking forward to it, and you spent time kind of, you'd taken away the day free, and then they didn't turn up. So
Right.
so it's like she didn't possibly value, obviously for everyone it's going to be different, but let's create a scenario where she maybe didn't value your time. So you have to look at that. Well, she's showing me that I'm not valuing my time. I'm not valuing my presence. So the gift is that you say, thank you for showing me that. I need to now feel into that, feel the pain of that, and recognize I need to shift my attention even more towards me and what I'm up to. And therefore my happiness and my success is less and less dependent on anybody outside me. And the people start to become just incidental in my life, and they're just like, it becomes a fun thing if people are showing up in your reality rather than needing anybody on the outside.
Right.
You start to become,
to it being a certain way.
exactly, because it's just highlighting attachment still. And unfortunately, when you start to go into this synchronistic flow, the attachments will show up more and more and more. So we have to then keep holding our nerve and not let the mind take over and say, well, she's a bad person, or I'm a bad person, or something's gone wrong that needs fixing. Because that's then acting out of wisdom rather than knowledge, and there's a huge difference. Now, when you're in flow, you start to align to wisdom. So what is wisdom? Wisdom is knowing how things work out in the end. So we all have knowledge about how to do things, but are they wise things to do? And this is, we have to, again, if we talk about the male female, women have to start to step into their wisdom, so that men start to realize that is the way out of the matrix, is to start to align to the female wisdom. So once we're in our flow, and if we're connected to our say our husbands, they will start to see that beauty and say, oh, thank goodness for that, she's showing me the way. I'm in my bleak midwinter and she's showing me there's hope, but the hope is not where I thought it was, in the attachments to the old programs, belief systems, and pathways, because men are very much aligned to systems and pathways. They love that type of thing. Give me the formula, to be an alpha male, and I will do what it takes to do that. They do that to the nth degree. So you're saying, well, there's no wisdom in that. How are you going to end up being? You'll probably have a heart attack at the age of 50, feel bitter and disappointed, and die before you get your pension or something. You know what I mean? Because you're living for the future the whole time, because that's men's setup, is living for the future. So you're saying, well, what's the wisdom in that? We have to live in the now. We have to be wise. So we have to, that's being the leadership, being in leadership. So, and like I was saying to you earlier on, because I'm quite different to you, my plant is the Virginia creeper. So I feel overexposed because I'm quite an extrovert, and I actually don't, because my story is not to be invisible, but to be blamed for everything, so I was always blamed for everything and invalidated, I was always seen that I was like treated more like a masculine person, because I was always strong and capable. And I want to be kind of incognito. So my flow, like a Virginia creeper, it doesn't have a bright flower. It's just a very delicate flower. And actually, but I can go anywhere I want, So because I'm like a person who's quite curious, and I just love sort of going everywhere and exploring, So so that when I'm in my flow, all my desires are met, because that's all I want to do, is I want to just explore and hang out with people, and sort of but not kind of stand out as if I have to kind of have the solution or be responsible for anything,
right?
Because that to me has caused my pain, is being over responsible, feeling like I have to parent everyone all the time,
Right.
And yes, my ego self will say that's a good thing to do, but that's the wounded healer, and there's an underbelly to that, so again, that wisdom inside me shows me how to be that, where I can thrive in being that, because when you're that plant is already connected to universal intelligence, the universal life force. So we don't have to do that bit. We don't have to trade ourselves for anything.
It's not this sacrifice to get something, which is the lack matrix has programmed us to think that, in order to get what we need, even love, right? There's a sacrifice that we have to make, there's somehow I've got to pay, for that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's I've written a blog about this, but it's what we're transitioning out of is what we call Newtonian physics, which is where we believe there is a mass, and in order to move that mass, in order to change our reality, we have to put effort and force into it. So mass and force. So you have to kind of keep pushing at things in order to get anything done, or get anything achieved, or do anything, right? When we're going into quantum physics, where the outside only reflects what's going on the inside. Okay, so we have to, so if something's not working on the outside, we've got to go back inside ourselves and rediscover that part of us that we've disconnected from, that our ego mind has almost like hidden under a rock somewhere. And the pain is telling us, the disappointment, the pain is telling us there's part of you that you haven't factored into your inner reality, And so, the work I do is a lot about inner visualization, where you start to reconnect with this character. So we did that a little bit with you, with the tulip. So if you kind of channel through that energy, so the listeners can do this, maybe channel through the energy of a flower. What does a flower do? It just kind of goes like that, it's graceful, it's moving, and it's not apologetic about anything, and it certainly doesn't move around other people, because women are over flexible. They're water, they're fitting around everybody all the time. They're trying to connect with everybody all the time, and feeling disappointed or upset if people are not connecting back. They're not, it's the unfairness of people not reconnecting with them. So when you become the tulip, it's like, I'm here, You know, this is it. You know,
Yeah.
I can embody the creeper, which is like, wow, I'm really interested in everything. I could just creep around, you know. So for each of us, we are a different thing that's going to work for us. So when you start to embody that, and the way we anchor all that is through our bodies, because our bodies, the sensations we have in our bodies is the anchor, and that tells us in no uncertain terms, this is who you really are. So when you know, when we say very in the matrix, people's bodies are very, very contracted. You know, they've got contraction in their throats, in their hearts, in their stomachs, so they're feeling like a screwed up ball where they have to kind of somehow kind of duck and dive through life. But as we start to feel that expansion in our bodies, we start to know on a very subliminal and unconscious way, this is who I am, this is what I am. And that gives us the confidence to trust that. It's about trusting that being you is going to give you everything that you want, you know. So we have to anchor it. So rather than just knowing it in the mind and saying, oh yeah, that's a lovely idea, it's handing it over to the ego mind, and that will always screw you over. So we start to become a little bit inauthentic about that. But when we anchor it in the body, there is 100% authenticity about that.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
that's to me what I've noticed as we've moved into this new paradigm of work. You know, even people who've maybe been in the self-help world for a while and, you know, are in therapy, like all these modalities that have gotten us to a certain point. But like this, doing this kind of shifting into the body causes like spontaneous healing. Whereas like
Exactly.
we're even healing with ease and grace now, as opposed to like now I got to go to like, you know, a year's worth of therapy because I discovered this abuse in my background and, you know, all of that. And that certainly has had its place in the past,
Yeah.
but where we're at now, it's like even that is way more effortless, and it comes from not trying to fix something, but from being who we actually have been all this time. That's just been underneath all of this rubble of conditioning that we've all
Yeah,
been programmed with.
exactly. Because again, it's that transition out of the Newtonian physics where we have to make a huge effort and spend hours and hours in therapy,
Yes.
where we have to keep trying,
Yeah.
into, oh, let me just go within and discover something.
Over and over and over and over again. Yeah.
Exactly. And that is easy. It's easy. You know, it's laughably easy, or it becomes easier. But it's, again, a whole discovering process. You know, it's not, I say it's easy, but we individually have to trust the process and keep engaging and being committed to that process.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, with my clients, some people are so committed because they've recognized, I've been around the merry-go-round so many times, this has to be, where's the exit point, right?
Yeah.
And they embrace that exit point really easily, and they make huge shifts very, very quickly. And then other people, they're still not 100% convinced, so they'll go around another merry-go-round again, because the mind can really, it's what we call temptation. You know, it's a little bit biblical, where it says, well, if you make this effort, make that effort, then sometime in the future you're going to be where you want to be.
Exactly.
And so therefore you're selling, you know, you're giving up your now moment for some future moment that actually is fictitious, you know. And so it's not living totally in the truth. So it is a process, not just individually but also collectively, you know, that we, and because we are awake enough now, it's almost like we're lucid dreaming. We know we're asleep and we have to get ourselves out of the dream world, which is the illusion. And so we're the pathfinders, we're the people forging that path. And so it's a bit like you know, like a crossword puzzle. At the beginning of the day it's more difficult to solve, at the end of the day it isn't, because in the quantum field, when we've done this work, it makes it easier for very asleep people, including our husbands or whoever that is, to kind of like know the path. So we're making that path in the consciousness field.
Creating new grids.
Yeah, exactly. It is. So everything, you know, has its place. We're all part of the puzzle pieces. Every person, again, we don't have to judge about where other people are at, because we're just doing what we need to do. I know in my experience, I was married to a very, very matrixy person, and there was a reason for that. It's because we had to counterbalance each other. So in a funny kind of way, I could do my quantum work because he was in the matrix and he was anchoring me. So we stopped judging. And I very honor him for that, because it's like he was so happy to be in the matrix. He knew how to work in the matrix. He could do all the boring stuff that I absolutely hated doing, which is going to work and, you know, doing the 9 to 5 without question and being totally happy about that, you know, and so that I could feel very secure to do my woo-woo stuff, you know. And so, you know, again, you can't, otherwise the mind will put a condition on that. I have to be married to a person who's equally enlightened to me as me, you know, because there is a reason for that. And ultimately life is already telling us everything that we need to know. You know, it is, there's nothing's gone wrong, you know, there is, life didn't make a mistake, you know, it is showing us where we're at the moment, you know. So yeah, so that's it really. Yes.
That's great. I really love this, the idea of like understanding your flower, and, you know, for women, like, to, you know, even just the thought of like, to me, like the tending to the soil, which is the heart, right? Like, you know, there's that biblical parable that talks about this, that's about the parable of the sower, you know, that sows the seeds, and three different people, and they do three different things with the seeds, but the parable is really about the condition of the soil being so important for
Yeah.
the seed itself, which is the heart. And then you were talking about like, then it needs the sunlight, right? Like we have to, you know, we all need to be in the sunlight right now, I think, but literally, but it needs that light, right? The light on it, and then it needs watering, and all of those things combined with understanding exactly what your flow is so that you can be in it.
Yeah.
To me, like for a lot of these women that literally were just coming up in my world this morning on my walk, you know, I would say that that would be the place to start.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because then you start to align to that flow and you trust it, and it's almost like it keeps the mind quiet because you're trusting, you're aligning to some deep wisdom. You don't have to make a flower grow, it knows how to do that. That's true nature, that's our true nature, and we are part of natural nature. And it's just doing the unthinkable, which is just trusting it, you know. And that the bonus prize is it becomes effortless, and it brings all your hopes and dreams, makes all your hopes and dreams come true, you know. Because when you are that flower, then the world will reflect that. So in your case, you know, the important people in your life will totally recognize you, and you help to save them and give them hope, you know, through your beingness, you know. So that's you know, it does all the work for you, you know. There's that, it makes your efforting totally redundant, put it that way. So
kind of come back to that like place where we were as little girls, where like we wanted life to be magical, right? Like we wanted everything to be sort of unfold like that, but you know, we gave that up a long time ago.
Yeah, well, this is where, when you go out of quantum physics, which is very, Newtonian physics, which is very reductionist, and that's what the mind is, it's reductionist. So it's like, if you can't see it and you can't touch it, it doesn't exist. And that's more the masculine world. It destroys all magic, okay? So then magic still happens in life, but yet the mind will totally discount it. And when you go into quantum physics, you recognize there is only magic. You know, this is where, again, it's about the miracles. You know, something can appear out of nowhere because you've made that quantum shift on the inside that we talked about. And suddenly out of nowhere, something will appear, you know, as if you couldn't make it up. You couldn't have planned for it. And so you start to believe in miracles again. Now, children do believe in miracles because they understand their true nature more than adults, but then they're introduced to the reductionist world where they are taught to shut down all those beliefs about what they kind of know in their hearts, you know. And yeah, exactly. And so the pain that women bear is they know in their hearts that there is magic, there is romance, there is amazingness, and it's effortless because women want to be effortless, because that's the yin quality, where everything, the world comes to them. They don't have to go out and effort hard and do all this stuff that really stresses women out, you know. And so that is, you know, again, it's that shift into quantum that is gonna is happening whether we like it or not, and we can,
Yes.
you know, that understanding on a collective level is already happening, you know. But we have to now consciously make that kind of commitment to it, put it that way, you know. So yes. Brilliant. Yeah.
Oh, good. This is great. So I guess if anyone's watching this and this is resonating or bringing something up, like drop us a comment and we'll definitely respond.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
This conversation is great. Thanks,
Yeah.
Micah.
Great, lovely to talk to you. And we'll speak again soon. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye.